To welcome Yang Berbahagia Datuk Vincent Pang, Chief Executive Officer Sabah Development Bank. Panelists, the first panelist, Mr. Osman Karakutuk, Executive Vice President, Treasury Management and International Banking in Ziraat Participation Bank, Turkey. Second panelist is Puan Khatijah Iskandar, CEO, Business Consultant, Restu Effective Sdn Bhd and Board Member of Ramzul Group Berhad. The third panelist, together with us today, Dr. Mohan Avari, Professor and Deputy Head at the School of Business, Monash University, Malaysia. So please welcome on the stage, moderator and also panelists. And ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce a bit on our speakers today. Our moderator, Datuk Vincent Pang, is the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer for Sabah Development Bank. He holds a Bachelor of Arts Accountancy from Swinburne University, Australia, and he is a fellow certified practicing accountant and a member of Malaysia Institute of Accountants, MIA. Datuk Vincent sits in the board of Sabah Development Bank Berhad, Sabah International Petroleum Sdn Bhd, Palm Oil Industrial Cluster Sdn Bhd, Jetama Sdn Bhd, and he is also one of the board member University Malaysia Sabah. He was accorded the Outstanding CEO Award by Association of Development Financing in Asia Pacific, ADFIAP, in 2011. Our first panelist, Mr. Osman Karakutuk, is the Executive Vice President. Did I mention your name correctly, sir? Karakutuk. Karakutuk. Thank you. Sorry? Mr. Osman is Executive Vice President for Treasury Management and International Banking, Ziraat Participation Bank of Turkey. He graduated from Faculty of Political Sciences, Ankara University in 1998. He then completed his master's degree at Sakarya University. Mr. Osman served as a civil servant in the Central Bank of Turkey between 1998 to 1999. He started his career as an assistant inspector at Ziraat Bank in 1999. Mr. Osman served as inspector, chief inspector, deputy head of board of inspectors, branch manager, Izmir first regional manager, head of branch operations department, head of channel management department respectively. In 2017, he was appointed as deputy general manager for financial coordination and human resource of Ziraat Participation Bank, Turkey, and he continues his duty as EVP for Treasury Management and International Banking within the same institutions. Our next panelist is Puan Khatijah Iskandar. She is a business consultant, CEO, Restu Effective Sdn Bhd and board member of Ramzul Group Berhad. Puan Khatijah is a seasoned banker with wealth of experience in financial industry of close to 30 years. She has comprehensive in understanding banking industry, trends and strategies, having served various leadership roles in commercial and development financial institutions. She was listed as one of the top 300 most influential women in Islamic business and finance in Women I Report 2020 and 2021. She has developed a strong business acumen starting from her early career stage, where her primary roles were to acquire and maintaining profitable relationships with SMEs as well as local and multinational companies. With this invaluable skill, she is able to continue to develop competency of business owners by being mentors to emerging SMEs. She is currently an independent non-executive director of Ramzul Group Berhad, the first technology company listed in ACE with presence in Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam and Indonesia. Our last panelist is Dr. Mohan Avari. He is a professor and deputy head engagement and impact at the School of Business, Monash University, Malaysia. He received his doctorate in Management of Innovation from the Department of Management Studies, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, following which he visited South Korea on a research fellowship at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. Prior to joining Monash University, he served as member of the faculty with the Nottingham University Business School and UBS at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia's campus. He is also He also held several leadership positions at NUBS Malaysia, including Director of Research, Acting Dean, Deputy Dean for External Engagement, and was also the Malaysia lead for the International Centre for Corporate Social Responsibility. He has published his work in international journals and reports for international agencies. He is an associate editor-in-chief for the Asian Journal of Technology Innovation and also on the editorial panels of the other international journals in the area of innovation and policy. He has served as a council member of the Consumer Forum under MCMC Malaysia, as an innovation auditor of SMEs in Malaysia, as a recourse person in WTA UNESCO workshops, and more recently as a UNESCO expert for entrepreneurship and innovation. That's it, a bit of background of our speakers today. So ladies and gentlemen, a reminder for all of you, our timekeeper will produce double bell sound. Can we? Yes, thank you. And it indicates that you only have 10 minutes left to wrap up your session. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, the leadership unmasked, the floor is yours, Datuk Vincent. Please.
Thank you, Mr. MC. Selamat petang dan salam sejahtera. Good afternoon to all present here today. I know it's just after lunch and you might be just getting woke up after all the heavy meals. But nevertheless, today we have a very interesting sharing ahead of us in a very, very interesting topic, leadership unmasked. This is a very challenging topic in this most disruptive time. Allow me to set the stage for our three speakers. I think most recently, at the end of 2019, a totally unexpected and disruptive worldwide event occurred. The emergence of the infectious COVID pandemic that saw the world shutting down and borders closing. This has caused huge disruption to the supply chain and to many balance sheets. COVID pandemic has disrupted the world in very unprecedented ways, and leaders are faced with the challenge of rebuilding the economies and societies. They must also address the health, social, and economic impacts of the pandemic, including the disparities that have been exposed by the crisis. So indeed, it's obvious that the post-COVID era has shifted the goalposts significantly. And we are now faced with a fast-changing world that is full of uncertainties that has impacted the way we conduct our business. Problem solving has become a new ball game whereby traditional methods and strategies may no longer work. Leaders now need to experiment, take risks, and embrace the new way to lead. Going forward, what are the expectations of our leaders now, and the direction, the unmasking that will take place? Ladies and gentlemen, with me today, I have three speakers from very different backgrounds and experts in their own fields who will be sharing their outlook on leadership unmasked. I don't have to further give the introduction. I met all three speakers recently, just now. Mr. Osman Karakutuk, and he called himself Mr. Blackwood. Kara is black, Kutuk is wood. So it's easier for me to call Mr. Blackwood. And also Puan Khadijah Iskandar is my fellow Sabahan from Lahad. Congratulations. And I'm sure she will share with us a lot from her experience. And Dr. Mohan Avari is a professor in Monash. And I'm sure he will share with us from the education side where it's going and building future leaders for our disruptive world that are happening to us now. So I would like to share, I'd like to change the format a little bit because I believe this topic, leadership unmasked, is really unmasking our leaders here to share with us from their own fields. So I will not ring fence them with questions. I've told them, please go ahead and just share with us what you think this topic is about. So I'm going to give the speakers 15 minutes each. And when it's 14 minutes up, I will have my own little bell. Okay, so 1 minute to wrap up. Okay, I will taking the time for this. So without further ado, may we start with Mr. Osman, please. Mr. Osman Blackwood. You can use the podium or you can sit down and speak. Either way, it's your choice.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. It's a big pleasure to be here. It's a big honor. I brought my deep greetings from our country, Turkey. It was very tough days for us. We faced a big disaster, as you know, a big earthquake. But I think we are fixing our difficulties. Inshallah, we will pass this period shortly. If we come to the topic, unmasked leadership term is a different term, and the wide range can come the right range meanings. That's why I googled before come to here, and I some think common if you have experience about the managing, you see the same things: motivating employees, encourage the employees, ensure the employees' involvement, transparency. These kind of terms of all leaderships species. But in my opinion, if we talk about unmasked leadership, we have to look at perfect example. The perfect example, in my opinion, is our Prophet, Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam life. There are many examples, there are many events in our Prophet's life, but three of them are striking me mostly about the leadership. The first one is Badr battle. After battle, as you know, Muslims won a big victory, striking victory. But after this victory, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "We won a victory, a battle, but we are turning we won a small battle, but we are now turning the big battle. The battle is battling with our souls, ourselves." The first example shows that if you want to be a successful, a good leadership, you have to start with yourself. If you convince your employee, you have to convince yourself. If you make to believe them for one target, you have to believe first. If you want to ensure your business to be successful, you have to believe that this will be successful. You have to start first by yourself. This is the main point, I think. The first lesson is battling yourself. If you want to make your employee come early, you have to come early. You have to be earliest. If you want to your employee leave late, you have to be latest. Yes, you have to obey your rules first. The conclusion is that first lesson is battling yourself. The second example is a battle of trench, digging trench. Before battle, the enemies, the non-Muslims, are very huge. That's why our Prophet asked the suggestion of his Sahabas. Although he is Prophet, he needed to ask anybody to make a decision, because he can make decision by himself, because he is Prophet. He can get the advice from directly Allah. But he asked his Sahabas decision, their suggestion. And one of the Sahabas suggested that digging a ditch is very useful for battling with the big enemies, big numerous of enemies. This Sahaba is Salman al-Farisi. He's coming from Iran. At that time, he's a Persian. And one of the latest Muslims. He is not one of the first ones. He is not one of the Arabic. He is a Persian. And majority of the Sahabas accepted this idea, and they dig trenches, and they won a big victory after the battle. This shows us, if you want to be a good leadership, if you have to be lead your employees, you have to get their opinions. You have to show a transparent management. Although some of the employees are not very close to you, or there is no any connection with you, but you have to get their opinions. Although he cannot be a Muslim, or he cannot be a nation, have a nationality with your country. But if the opinion is right, if he has the experience, have enough experience, you have to obey his opinion. The second lesson from this example is that. The third one is, in my opinion, when the Mecca is conquered by the Muslims, key of the Kaaba belongs to a non-Muslim family. Uthman bin Ibn Talha has this key, and the Muslims, Hazreti Ali radiallahu anh, got this key and gave to the Prophet Hazreti Muhammad, and Hazreti Muhammad delivered the key back to the Uthman bin Talha. Although he's not a Muslim guy, he is non-Muslim, and Sahabas asked to the Prophet, why did you deliver this key to the non-Muslim guy? His answer is, hand over the askawar. You have to deliver the askawar to the right person, experienced person. Then we understand that from this example, you have to give the responsibility, the experienced, the right person. You have to promote the right person. Although this guy not only the relatives of you, maybe Prophet can deliver this key to his relatives. Maybe he can deliver this the first Muslims, but he didn't. He delivered the key only the right guy who can do the duty in a right way. That's why the third lesson from this: if you lead your employee, you have to be fair. You have to consider the meritance. Yes. These three examples shows that if you make a fair and right management, you have to obey three things. First one is transparency. Well, the first one, start by yourself. You have to start with your soul, with your manner, with your behavior. You have to come, as I said, early your work before everybody. The second is involve all employees in decisions and their thinking manner to your work. And this enhance to engage the employee to your business. And the third one is to be fair, to make the employees believe that there is a decisions making by the justice, and if he do right thing, he can get promotion. These three things, I think, the key of the making a leadership. After pandemic, we faced many difficulties, and we have many different cases. But pandemic also give us some opportunities, give us some change the behavior of the making business, especially visual meetings, visual visual working behavior comes to our business style. I believe that if you obey these three rules, you can pass all difficulties by without any facing a difficulty. This is a key of the, I think, the management, the managers also. If I turn to our bank, I am now Executive Vice President of Ziraat Participation Bank. We are dealing with Islamic banking. We obey. We always, in my especially field, we obey these two rules. We involve our employees' decisions. We have a transparent business, and also we have a good environment with our employees. That's why, for example, last 3 years, growth rates are very high in our bank. We have a goal to make the share of the banking, Islamic banking in Turkey more bigger. For example, 3 years ago, the Islamic banking sector's share is only 5%. Now it's 10% in terms of assets. Especially the efforts of our bank, I think we are a state bank, made the other banks also improve their business in their field. 3 years, for example, I can give an example for. Last year, we have a growth rate in terms of assets, 117%. Before last year, we have a 65% growth rate in terms of assets. If you have a good, we didn't aim to enlarge our asset size like this percentage, but the environment made us enlarge our asset size. If you do right things, if you do if you promote the right managers, I think the succession come without any difficulty. It is about what I am saying. Thank you for your communists. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. Excellent sharing. Believe in yourself, set examples, make sure your employees buy in, have a sense of ownership. And I think your third point was being pragmatic. As long as doesn't matter if the cat is black or white, as long as you can catch the rat. Yeah? I think that's where the message is coming from. Okay, we shall go forward with Khadija. Khadija, where you would like to, you want to sit there or you want to take the rostrum? Take the rostrum, okay? Can we get the people to help with the mic? Someone here? Can someone arrange the mic for her?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamualaikum, and welcome to this forum. And when I was asked to give this, to give the presentation on this topic on this very day, I'm not sure whether all of you realize that yesterday was the International Women's Day. So I before that, then I think it's not too late to wish all the women here Happy International Women's Day. Yeah. So, and I think the time is about right for me to talk about leadership en masse in the context of DEI, diversity, equity, it's not equality, equity, and also inclusion. Yeah. So next slide, please. No offense and no pun intended. Okay, so you can read there. If you want something said, get a man to do it. If you want something done, get a woman to do it. I see a woman clapping hands, so it must be true at least. Okay, so this is actually from a quote from Margaret Thatcher. Of course, she is the right authority to talk about it. And although she mentioned it in the context of politics, I think everyone agrees that it can be applicable to our day-to-day office as well. Yes, right? There's politics even in the office, right? So that's it is applicable, I think. Yeah, in my view. So I can be biased because I'm a woman leader as well. And then, if you notice why Margaret Thatcher has the authority, she is actually the first woman prime minister in the UK. Not only she made the history by being the first one, she is also the long-serving prime minister in the UK in the 20th century. And she's also making history by being the only one so far, I think, who have won the general election 3 times in a row. And so, meaning to say she was the prime minister from 1979 to 1990 for 11 long years. And during that time, if you notice, the head of sovereign was also a woman, Queen Elizabeth. And UK still exists until today, despite the 2 women managing the country since then, right? There must be something good qualities in the woman, right? But a little bit of fun fact about this Margaret Thatcher. She actually graduated from Oxford College, yeah, with a degree in chemistry. So when she graduated 1948, 30 over years before she became the minister, she actually went for an interview at ICI. Yeah, if you know ICI, this is the company, yeah, chemical company producing the paint. If you're into the home improvement, you would know ICI. At least here in Malaysia, ICI. And then she went for the interview. Oh, let me get my note so I can quote exactly what was said to her during the interview. Yeah. So she was actually rejected. Why? Reason being, she was rejected after the personnel department, then they call it personnel department, not HR department, yeah, assess her as headstrong, okay, obstinate. You can Google what it means. It means it's just wouldn't listen to anyone or just maintain her views, and dangerously self-opinionated. All agrees? I know some may say, oh, that's actually described perfectly how a woman is, right? So, okay. But is this a bias during that time in 1948? What is wrong being headstrong, obstinate, and dangerously self-opinionated? Being a leader, you can actually turn it and actually look at it in a very positive way. If I were to assess a person at that age coming for an interview, I will make a conclusion that the person is actually confident, firm, and very knowledgeable. But that's the bias in 1948. And I do not think much has changed since then. The stereotyping still exists until today. Talking from my personal experience as well, women has always have to prove themselves more than the men in any leadership position. So I think next is the video that I would like to share with you. This describes perfectly, I think, the perception about women's leadership. Perception versus reality. See whether you can relate that to what the point that I have made just now. Please, video, please.
Catsup. Get out of here. Come here, you. You'll figure it away. Now I got you. Come on. Now I got it. It couldn't be. Or could it? Now you stay here, you be a good boy, you. Now sit there. Here you are, gentlemen. Hot dog. When it comes to cooking, I'm the cat's meow. Sit down. Oh, but I'm not tired. I'll just stand while you eat. Sit down with your heads on or off. You talk us into it.
So I thought I saw this video posted by one of LinkedIn Connection. So I thought this actually described perfectly the perception about woman leadership. Well, it is also called tough love. You see, women can be very firm, but more often than not, that it's actually a character that actually needed that can complement the man leadership. I'm not saying that all women are better than the man. No, we need to complement with each other, right? So it's not saying that one is better than the other. So it's not about being equal, but it's being equitable. Yeah. So I think it's not fair not to mention another leader on the local front. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I think enough video. Okay. This is Dato' Yvonne Chia. Dato' Yvonne Chia is a local woman leader here in Malaysia. She was actually the first woman to become a CEO in the banking sector of Malaysia in 1996 at the age of 43. And she actually retired as a CEO of another bank, yeah, at the age of 60. So if you saw just now, Margaret Thatcher was given 11 years opportunities to lead the country. Then this person, Dato' Yvonne, was given a good 17 years to lead organizations as a CEO. So opportunities were given to this lady. And she has won many awards as well. Yeah. So I think if you can see the between her and Margaret Thatcher, they were given the opportunities. So in Malaysia, there was a quota given by the government for 30% women to be on the board of a large company. But the question that we should ask ourselves, do we really need the quota, or do we really need to give the women opportunities based on merit? We heard from the first speaker just now, it should be based on merit, not on gender. Yeah? Because there's no point if you say 30% of women, then the men will start filling in the body only. Yeah? But there is no quality, just the form, but not the substance. That's my view, by the way. Okay? And then on a general perspective, in the general context, next slide, please. When we talk about leadership en masse, I think that I had the opportunity to lead a bank during COVID. So I can see during COVID, then if the leaders are not actually competent, not knowledgeable enough, they may not be prepared in that situation, yeah, to face the challenges and to come up with the problem solving. Yeah. So this is, I agree with, that is the next slide. Sorry. This slide is actually the statistics to show that for organization that is led by, that has 30% women on the board, they actually perform better financially. And this was published yesterday, yeah, on the International Women's Day. So this is just another facts to support the theory of the woman leadership. Yeah. I'm not the one who made this up. This is in the newspaper. And next slide, this is the one that next slide, please. Yeah, this is the one that I think I agree with this quote, where the true test of leadership is how well you function in a crisis. So this is in general, whether you are man or woman. This is the competency that is required for a leadership. Yeah, because I've seen that some leaders, they tend to be stuck or immobilized when there's a crisis. Yeah. So because during the crisis, you really need to have the competency, the knowledge, because during that time, you really have to roll up your sleeve. Less delegation, but more responsibilities. Yeah. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. What is the challenges post-COVID? I think during COVID, and because there was a movement control order, so actually what happened during the time, the earth is actually taking a break, right? While people are actually being infected by the virus, but the earth is actually recovering, right? Because of less movement, less cars on the road. And even the animals are happy. Only the human being were down then, were very sad during that time. So because of that, also during COVID-19, there's more appreciation and awareness on the well-being, on the importance of the well-being of taking care of the earth, society, as well as integrity during that time. So the challenge post-COVID-19 is to keep up that momentum. Yeah, to keep up that momentum actually during this COVID-19, and expecting what is the new normal then. What is the next new normal? Yeah, And during the pandemic, actually, our staff is also knows and realize that some of them can be more productive in the office. Yeah. So there's a demand for flexi working arrangement. Yeah. And for women specifically, if you notice the statistics, if you realize there are more women in the higher education sector, in the school, yeah, compared to men. But when it comes to leadership, there are more men in the leadership, right? What happened to the woman? Perhaps that flexibility is required because also a fact, woman is the primary caregiver for family members, not just children. When the parents are sick, they are also the family caregivers, right? So the flexibility is required because there are some values in the woman leadership, yeah? And I think the challenge is then for the leader is how do we monitor the productivity of our staff, right? That is the challenge, productivity. And then how do we keep them engaged? And because we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, how do we include them in the organization being not physically present? That's the challenge, in my view, yeah, when post-COVID. And all these actually can be summed up into ESG risks, right? ESG meaning taking care of the environment, society, as well as governance. So the challenge is actually post-COVID. People more realize their self-realization, more awareness about ESG, and people start to demand their rights, right? So this is what I call ESG risk. So the challenge is now, how is it different from the previous time? You're not just managing risk for the company. It's beyond the company. Everyone now has to manage the risk for the sake of the earth, for the world. So we are managing the risk for the world, not just for the company. Yeah, because of that's the challenge in the COVID-19, post-COVID-19. Okay, then we can see actually some example. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so this is the example where a company, Shell, is being sued by the stakeholders and alleged not doing enough to protect the environment. This is the E. Next example, Pinterest being sued, allegation of discrimination against women and employees of color. Next example, Google. Yeah, again, another case. It all related to DEI. Of course, in Malaysia, we do not have such law yet, but it will be here, if not sooner, later, right? So that's actually the risk that is faced by the leaders as well. So what's next? Next slide, please. What's next? I thought I found this a picture in the internet. It describes perfectly what the future leaders need to do or now. What do we need to know? Balancing all the IQ, EQ, and SQ, right? When you talk about IQ, you know the world is changing rapidly. We are talking about digitization, globalization. So a leader needs to keep on improving its knowledge. Yeah. And also there is intergenerational gap when it comes to knowledge. Yeah. Somebody mentioned, I think this morning, about the whatever gen that was born after 2000, that they know that the moment they open their eyes, technology is already there. So they're joining the workforce. So this working together between generation, learning from each other. Yeah. The day has gone where we say you learn from the seniors because they have more experience. Now you cannot say learn from the seniors when it comes to digitalization. Correct? The seniors has no experience whatsoever. Now the importance is about innovation. So keep on learning as well as unlearning. Some of the skills that we had may no longer be relevant in today's world. So the future leaders, you have to keep on learning. That is one. Yeah. And number two, in terms of EQ. So because again, generational gap, and different experience, different exposure because of COVID-19. Then we talk about mental health. So we have to take care of mental health. Our emotional quotient must also be good. To balance that all, then I also believe that you must have the spiritual quotient. All religions actually teach good things, right? So this is something that you balance it, that you need me time, self-realization, self-healing, yeah, spiritual quotient. This, I believe, will actually prevent burnout, yeah, because we are actually in the transition from being compliance-based to value-based. So this will be a great help. I think that's all that I had for today. Thank you everyone for your attention.
Thank you, Khadija. I think I cannot talk much now and let the woman do, huh? I thought it was a very good insight. I mean, it has Khadija has given a talk that has opened us, especially the men, a wider scope of thinking, scope for thinking. And I think one of the points she raised, I think is very relevant, is COVID has now forced us to be more flexible in our working time. I think that's where women can really participate in this now, because I think women, because of responsibility of families and all those things, are definitely more caught up in other responsibility, whereas men just go to work and come back and sleep, isn't it? And eat. Yeah, and eat. But I think, Khadija, thank you very much for this very important sharing. It's very, very, very refreshing. Thank you. So without further ado, I'd like to go to the third speaker, Mr. Mohan. He'll give more insight from the education side. Thank you. Over to you, Mohan.
Thank you, Datu. We usually face classes of 200 to 300 students, and I'm not very nervous. But this is the first time I'm nervous because I don't have a script. I just have points and a PowerPoint script and so on. So just like Pon Khadija said, why did I take up this offer to speak in front of leaders? Datu Vincent, you have been a CEO, and I don't have any CEO experience, especially of leading hundreds and thousands of people across locations. But this is what I thought. Many of us who are not leaders and complain about leaders, I'm one of them too, right? We what's the word that layman people use? We bitch about our bosses. He or she could have done better. So these were some of the reflections. As this was going on after 20 years in Malaysia, by now I hope you know that I'm from India, and our thoughts are going to be fairly scattered, and I'll try to bring it down to a more focused speaking. 20 years of working in 3 organizations and 5 different bosses, it's been interesting observing. One of the things is Indians have a big ego. We do come from a large country and we think we know better than everybody else in the world. And my Indian ego has been kicking up after 20 years in the country. 2020, I was ready to head back home, and the pandemic hit and locked us back into Malaysia. That's when the thoughts start happening. The ego kicked in also because could I not have been a better leader? And the lady who talked and made me do this kind of thinking was my wife. She also, she said, what is wrong with you? Go out and earn more money and by becoming a leader instead of leading in the house. But jokes apart, these were serious issues. Why couldn't I do what I'm complaining? And these were thoughts. Simultaneously, a co-author who was with me in Malaysia, she's a South Korean working in Japan, and I'm an Indian working in Malaysia, and we've all muddled up brains right now, not sure what our identity is. But she has decided to embark on a study on Asian values and leadership. And there's a second part to her work which I don't dare get into. She's been talking about shortcomings of Western capitalism. I'm not daring enough to have an evidence-based approach on that, but she's daring enough. It's way too esoteric for me. I don't have a behavioral science background, nor do I have an economics background. She's got a paper published, and apparently the Western editors told her not to call it failure, but shortcomings. And that was accepted. That's already irritating her because she has evidence to show failure of Western capitalism, particularly during the COVID. But the Western journal editors wouldn't accept it. That's when I got triggered to start working with her. This is Rebecca Kim from Ritsumeikan University in Japan. We started with some curiosity, conversations as academics do. And we found that leaders, or at least I found, particularly the Tata Group, I'm sure now they're famous enough in the world, We do see them as good and bad guys, but they're now grown to be one of the best companies in the world on various financial and other parameters. I started noticing that Indian leaders were communicating very differently the moment the lockdown hit. So we started observing on the website what were communications across different countries. My interest is sustainability and innovation. 15 years ago when I started this, or 20 years ago, this was not of importance to anybody, particularly in MBA. I was seen as a hopeless teacher. It was a compulsory module, so students would go through it. But 20 years now, I'm becoming the hero, and it's a wonderful module. So given all this background, and we started seeing the changes, she decided, why don't we collect some evidence? How do we determine a successful organization? She went on financial parameters. The top 20 market cap companies in 6 locations, 3 Western locations and 3 Asian locations. She chose Japan and Korea for obvious reasons. She's a Korean and she's from Japan. And she chose India and not Malaysia. I don't know why. Top 20 companies, France, UK, and USA. Just so that a journal accepts it, but also to see what were these companies seen as successful financial patterns and what they were doing. And very surprising results emerged. Just before the pandemic, 2019, 2020, the sustainability reports, the CEO statements had words like economic responsibilities, ESGs, human-oriented was very small, customer safety, effective cooperation, and so on. There was a little bit of a Western term called creating shared value, which Asians we always did, but we never had a word for it, and diversity. Post-COVID or after the lockdown, suddenly things changed. The biggest phrase was human-oriented. Something even more interesting emerged. And it's very hard for us to get this through to a journal article. It's going through a third correction. And we've added on an Irish academic just for flavor. That was fidelity. We've never seen the word fidelity with leadership. It's always seen in terms of marriage or trusteeship and so on, right? So digitalization, resilience, fidelity, diversity, calmness also. Words that were being used to calm down 100,000 people working for you, especially in a pandemic. This was just words from CEO statements that we picked up. So 120 plus 120, 240 sample. That seems to make scientific people happy. There can be still wrongs in it, but nevertheless, right? Pon Khadija set me up very nicely. You used the word values in addition to sustainability. So this led on to a study on Asian values. Could Asian values start being identified and given terms that Westerners would understand? So just finished a 7-day trip across India. I chose companies, and she trusted me on it. We chose a few parameters, companies that have lasted more than 50 years. I also asked questions to people in a city. Which company would you choose to represent your city? I come from Bangalore. I see myself as a Bangalorean, but my home base is Hyderabad. And Hyderabad is incidentally an Islamic city. So they call the word Nizamic values or Nizam values and so on, which includes waking up comfortably late and going at 10 in the morning to work. Unlike in Malaysia, where your Muslim values are to go to work by 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. These are interesting things my sister, who's a sociologist, is picking up from a leadership point of view. What's wrong in going to work at 10 o'clock? My city, Bangalore, has a siesta time, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. I took it for granted, and we went as a tourist. My wife complained, no shopping between 2 and 4. Unlike in KL, you can shop from 10 to 10. How are these translating to value systems? Why should you work 9 to 9? Or why should you work 7 to 5 if productivity is the same? Bangalore is an R&D city. Every company worth its salt has an R&D center in the city of Bangalore. It's the city where the light combat aircraft comes out. All satellites in India come out of Bangalore. All the missiles that we can shoot anybody down with come from Hyderabad. Waking up at 10 and going back to work at home at 4 and 5. I don't see anything wrong with any Islamic values of relaxation and fun and having cups of tea. These are words that I have to translate to research. I'm not making any comments, yeah? It's just interesting to observe. So we picked companies. Which company represents the city? It turns out to be a company called Cyient, a manufacturer for Boeing, sort of an outsourced partner in Hyderabad. The second company is one of the largest renewables company in the world called Greenco, 2 companies in Hyderabad. If it's Bangalore, there's a hands down pick. It's always Infosys, a company known for its values and for its integrity and governance systems. And we started talking to the leaders of those places. I picked a third city out of just fun. We wanted to have a tier 3 city. And there's one distribution company, just distributes automobiles. And interesting value systems came about. I'm not talking about unmasking leadership I realized. We're trying to see, we didn't use the word unmask, but to unravel what are Asian values. She's done study in Japan, Korea, next is Malaysia. And we want to see which companies to pick. So if this was a class, I want to ask when I go back at 7 o'clock, which companies you think represent Kuala Lumpur in terms of values? What is a Kuala Lumpurian company? Which company you think represents Penang? It can't be Intel because it's not a Malaysian company. Or is it Intel and that represents Penang values? Penang values are thriftiness and perhaps engineering orientedness and so on. So could leaders start thinking about these terms is what we wanted to look at. I'm not going to talk about challenges because Pon Khatija has really identified them very beautifully, intergenerational audiences to manage and so on. But our findings led to 3 terms: fidelity, calmness, and collaborative resilience. And collaborative resilience were things like pursuing operational resilience. This could mean going away from efficiencies or pure productivity measures, more and more terms that are coming up. And if you Google it again, my co-panelist has Googled it. I made a mistake. I should have chat GP'd it. And maybe I would have got some better answers. I don't. So some other things that emerged, personal values, that Vincent, we spoke about it. Could religion, as you pointed out, if you are religious, the term is religiosity, whether you're Islamic or whether you're Hindu or whether you're Christianity. Usually the values are same, usually, unless people misinterpret it. Could that be a way to have Asian values in leadership? We're beginning to question. So some interesting parameters emerged in the interviews. 4 out of the 5 leaders that we spoke to started using terms like creating value to employees and not to investors. That's their agenda. So as a founder and a CEO, they are negotiating with the investors, companies that are dealing with international investors, local investors, banks, and even small investors. How do we negotiate long-termism to create value for employees? I won't talk about the Indian companies we interviewed, but a local company, I'm happy to market it even though I'm not paid any money for advertising. It's called Hexa Food. If you're in the supermarket next, please look out for it. It sits along with international brands on local and international spices. A small company from the town of Klang, 70 to 90 employees, flourished in the pandemic. And we think it's because of the values of the leader. He didn't use the term creating value for employees, but all his training sessions, and I do partake in some of them. He uses a platform called Discord, apparently popular among the young people for gaming. My daughter panicked when she saw the Discord app on my laptop. She thought I'm spying on her, not realizing that it's for nerdy reasons of attending training sessions with a company. He has 2 types of training sessions, and World Bank has featured him as a case study right now on labor and labor development. So one of the things he does is the training for companies' productivity improvements, week 1. Week 3, he looks at personal development of the individuals. So the training I attended was on agile thinking and on NFTs, and why he starts a division on NFT to complement his spice business, but also NFTs as a way for his employees to get in touch with digitization and make themselves some money in the gaming arena and so on. Very interesting how a small town boy can run a company based on certain values that we are unearthing. And this is called creating value to employees and not just for the financial side of things. So if it's developmental financial institutions, you're creating value for the nation first, followed by consumers or clients, and then of course to the investors. I keep hearing from a friend, Tim Gosher, who works with DFIs in Nepal. And he says the expectancy of Western DFIs, the ROIs and the IFFs are same as commercial banks. That was a shock to me. I thought it was a little more liberal. Nevertheless, right? The other word that kept coming up is trust. How do you build trust with clients, with investors, and with the employees again? The reason is they want to keep the employees as long as possible. They do not have the money to retrain employees. I think this resonates very well where you have foreign employees, especially in countries like Malaysia with manufacturing organization. Somehow the term transaction cost economics has been completely forgotten in the context of leadership. If you change an employee, just to give an example, I changed my job after 16 years, and my role is to engage with industry and create collaborations with colleagues in the school. It's taken 8 months for me to understand the 70 people in my school alone, to do not just to know what their competencies are, but their ability to work with industry. Whereas when I was in Nottingham, the 1 year I knew everybody in all the schools, and I could create collaborations easily. The economists use the term transaction cost economics, right? How do you reduce transaction costs and create a more better way of value creation for even the financial institutions? last few words. So trust. And apparently during the independence days in India, there was a model called the trusteeship model. If you Google it, it's based on Mahatma Gandhi's value system of self-reliance and so on, which the current Indian government, there are some awkwardities with the current Prime Minister, I realize, but nevertheless, they're trying to bring back this trusteeship model, Asian values, and what could be Asian values for leadership. So could it be the way we work with employees, long-termism versus short-termism in terms of employees and other issues? A Grab driver that I went with recently said, I always advise people to jump the shop every 3 years so that they can increase their salary, not realizing that in the long run, it'll still be the same. There is data to show 20 years down the line, if you're stuck with an unless it's a toxic organization. So what could academic organizations offer as example for leadership? If you notice the tech companies, the Googles, the Apples, the Infosys, or the TCS, all of them call themselves campuses. An easier way to understand this in terms of leadership is my dean in Nottingham University at the UK campus. When we do accreditations, we have to comply to certain standards. Malaysia campus, it was very easy. The head of the school said jump and we all jumped. We were asked to memorize the mission statement. We did. The accreditors were very happy. In the UK, he said, I have 110 individualistic consultants and I have to take them all in one direction. How do I do it? So you have to get a buy-in from 110 stubborn, obstinate academics. And men or women, it doesn't matter, whatever the gender. So could academic institutions offer a way for development financial institutions with intergenerational, multi-generational employees? I think they can. We have to deal with students who are 18 to 21 in the class. To get them to be silent itself can be quite challenging. Next, by evening, I have to go and speak to executives in an MBA. And in between, I have to speak to colleagues who all want to do their own thing. Now I have 75 of them in 75 directions. So how do we get buy-ins? Could there be an Asian value system? What values could we create? So the term for it, for you to chat GPT or to Google, is apparently distributed leadership. That's my 15 minutes. Do have a look at what is distributed leadership. That's the term that's emerged to summarize what all of us have said till now. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mohan. I think you make a very important point. The communication pre-COVID and the communication post-COVID of leaders. I think post-COVID, it's a very human-orientated conversation going on. Fidelity, resilience, collaboration. I think Mr. Blackwood did mention about that too, isn't it? In his sharing. Very interestingly is also the values. I don't mind going to work in Hyderabad. I can sleep from 2 to 4. A good siesta before you go back to work. Do they go back to work after 4? They do. Until? No closing time. Okay. I don't know, ladies, can you take that? You work from home. Yeah. Anyway, before I monopolize all my 3 speakers, I think we have today got quite a wide, extremely wide ranging experiences shared from Mr. Blackwood. You don't mind me calling Blackwood again? From all the way from Turkey. I think that Turkey experienced a very bad earthquake, and definitely it was a trauma for your country after COVID, after all these things, and you have earthquake again. So interesting. Then definitely your leader has to be really en masse in Turkey. Okay. And secondly, we also had a very good sharing from Khadija, especially straight after International Women's Day. It was a very, very, very refreshing to hear your talk about women opportunities. And definitely from Mr. Mohan, I think he shared about India work and being from India and then being part of Malaysia too. I think you can call him Malaysian by now. I think it does give a good sharing about 2 different work experiences. Okay? So before I go on, I would maybe like to open to the floor for questions. I'm sure you have a lot of questions to ask these 3 participants here from their interesting sharing. Over to you, please. Is the mic being moved around? Any questions? I think there's one. Is there? Prashad.
I would like to go first, I suppose. Right. My question is to Puan Khadija. Right. I have always read that the the business environment, or whether it be the political environment, the environment is always tough. The environment is always violent. It's always uncertain. Right. And since the environment that we operate in is in that nature, do you think that most successful women leaders like Margaret Thatcher or Datuk Yvonne Chia just now had to adapt their demeanor to match the environment? Does that mean, in other words, right, when you're in a violent environment, you probably need to be obstinate. You need to be tough. You need to be, you need to be emotionless to a certain extent, right? So you have to have this persona. And the characteristics that I mentioned are essentially usually attributed to the male leader, right? So do women leaders have to adjust to that? So that's my question.
Khadija, difficult question.
Can you hear me? Okay. Do we react, you mean, to the violence or whatever, the culture in the organization? At the end of the day, I think the leader, if there's a toxic culture in the organization, if the violence in the organization, is the job of the leader to change it. So as a woman leader, you always try, we just like playing the role like a mother. If you are acting very badly, they will call you aside. Come, let's talk about it. And then try to change the culture. I think that's the challenge. Whether we react and being violent, I think we have to do it in our own ways. What is important is to make sure that we have the substance and the knowledge. As a woman, we're also expected or treated to have knowledge more than the men in general. So based on my experience, if you can demonstrate that, of course, the first few period will be very tough, yeah. But if you can demonstrate that, then you can get a buy-in when they see the benefits, yeah. Because I had the chance working under Yvonne Chia, actually, when she was the first CEO at RHP. I don't mind sharing with you, for the first few months, all the men leaders resigned, one by one, yeah. So it's changing the culture, right? So do what is right. If the culture is not right, change the culture. Lead the change. The problem with the women leaders, of course, some organization, the culture is so toxic, they will boot you out. They will boot the leader out, even though the leader is very good, is very competent. So I think this is quite common. I hope, no offense, in the DFI, when the politicking is very, very intense. Yeah, and if you notice in the DFIs in Malaysia, no woman leaders survive for long. Anybody disagree with me?
Anyone disagree?
Anyone? Can anyone name me one female CEO in DFIs that can survive like Yvonne Chia, 17 years? So it's the culture. To me, if you cannot change the culture, you don't get intoxicated in that environment. Get out. There are opportunities somewhere else. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, there's another lady going to ask you a difficult question.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for the panel members for the candid sharing, if I may say so. My name is Aisha from Malaysia Institute of Corporate Governance. My question is, I was listening intently to your conversation, and
Speak louder, please.
And I was looking at the word unmasking, right? So indeed, we've seen that during COVID, people have unmasked themselves. They tend to be more human. They tend to be more empathetic with each other. However, I also ponder whether with the emergence of social media, there's also a lot of masking where what you see is not really what is happening on the ground, right? So I wanted to get some thoughts from the panel. Whether do you see this as a trend of a new mask emerging where people want to look good on social media, to upkeep with the Joneses, but that might not be the actual happening on the ground. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone to take up the question? Yeah. Mohan, please.
The academic answer to that is authentic leadership. I'm not doing that. My pulse to reality has become my two daughters and how they react. There's an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old, two complete opposites. One pretends to be rebellious, piercing her ears and wearing skulls, but very meek inside. And the other one is as girly as they come, but very bold on the outside. We see ourselves that way, and so do our friends. And they've been talking about social media, people who are popular on social media. And if they represent a group of youth, and we see their friends also, it's observations we're making. And we notice that the scrutiny they do of a social media influencer, the scrutiny they do when we watch news and talk about leaders, particularly from my home country, Modi, that's the dinner table conversations that get combative. So it is interesting, and your question is interesting. So unmasking leaders in a social media thing can be the same as off social media, at least with the new generation. I know my sample is 2, but I believe they represent a fairly large number of youth across the world, exposed to over social media or influencers. A quick last word, we've also found how they're buying things because of sustainability interests. I don't even have to preach. The first thing they did in the lockdown apparently is to find out where there are websites and there are blogs now where you can buy where you can get information on local designers, local food, and local products. They never go to a chain. They will not go to Starbucks or Coffee Bean. It has to be, they check even that much. So I think there is an emergence of a new trend of authenticity among the new generation, at least.
Okay. Anybody else want to tackle the question?
Adam Smith, I think everybody knows him very well. And Adam Smith's sentence, let them do, let them pass. Transparency is, I think, very important. If you let them do, invisible hand will regulate. That's why I think for right communication, maybe some misinformation occurs in the social media, but if you get the right information and the direct, especially in the disaster in Turkey, social media helped us to reach the people who are on the rubbish. That's why some aids can go directly to them, and the aiders can find the right person by social media. That's why social media is very important, especially recently. I believe that, yes, there are some difficulties about the social media, but transparency and to get the information directly from the longers helps us to understand also the nation by social media. That's why I am saying let them do, let them pass.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you answer? Okay. Is there any other questions? I think to answer that also just now, I believe that Tan Sri Art did make a very good point. When the parliament is in session, if there is a CCTV, then you see a different behavior. When there's no more CCTV, they behave like very civil to each other. Compliance. So So social media does create different unmasking in us as leaders. Yeah? Any more questions you'd like to add on? Okay, I know it's late afternoon. I will just do a simple summary. I believe that, again, I'll bring to what Tan Sri Art mentioned this morning. I think realism is really approaching us after this disruptive era of post-COVID. Has overwhelmed the idealism a lot. I think leadership unmasking is based on my three speakers. I can basically summarize as leaders going forward must be more agile, must be more adaptable. He has to have a lot of resilience and grit, especially from Turkey. Yeah? And more inclusivity and diversity, especially for the ladies. Right? So, thank you very much to the three speakers. On behalf of the FM, we appreciate very much your sharing today. So, ladies and gentlemen, can you please give the three speakers a big round of applause. So, over to you, MC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent, for the inspiring session together with the panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause to our speakers here. Next, I am pleased to invite Encik Izwan Zainuddin, the chairman of ArtFilm, to hand over mementos to our panel speakers. Please welcome. Okay, can we have a group photo together with Encik Izwan, chairman of ArtFilm, and also the panel speakers? And please showcase your memento to the camera. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Vincent. Thank you, the panelists, and also Encik Izwan. So, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up our first day of ArtFilm International CEO Forum 2023. Thank you for your great participation, and we look forward to meeting you again